I'm Becky McCoy, and you're listening to Stories of Unfolding Grace, the podcast about grace during unexpected times. You'll hear from real people dealing with hard stuff, and I hope you'll feel encouraged that you can bravely live through hard stuff too. This is the very last episode of the first season. I can't believe that it's been 30 episodes. My friend Heather Bender from episode 7 is interviewing me, and just in case you're not convinced that I ever get nervous, for every and like that you hear in this episode, I deleted at least 4. This is episode 30 of Stories of Unfolding Grace. I can't believe it's been 30 episodes. I'm actually sitting in a hotel room with a bunch of writer friends. We're at the Hope Writers Workshop, and so I thought this was the perfect way to finish up my first season. So I'm talking with Heather Bender from episode 7. And actually my friend Amy Liebman from episode 23 is here too. So it's been really fun to get to know these people in real life and not just online. Heather and I are going to talk about actually one of my own stories of unfolding grace that I've experienced this year, and probably go down a couple rabbit trails because that's just how we roll. So
how we work, and I've done exactly 0 podcast interviews, so we'll just see how this goes.
So we wanted to start out talking about, so we're staying in the same room at this workshop, and according to Meyers Briggs, our personalities are like on opposite ends of the spectrum. And so it's been really fascinating to see how we travel together.
Yeah, I'm an ENFP, which is kind of like, let's do all the things at once.
Yeah, right. And kind of like fly by the seat of your pants.
That is my life. But we were kind of going back and forth trying to figure out logistics of traveling and, what did you say? What gator weight? No, what was it you asked me?
Oh yeah, the guy. So I'm an INFJ, which is like a very
God, we shouldn't even be friends.
Like I know, yeah. So like I'm like, oh, awesome. Lynn, who's here, is also an INFJ, which is so cool. We're like 0.1% of the population or something like that. And Hope. Oh, this is awesome. So we tend to be, like, very plan ahead, very organized, very, like, on top of everything. So I park in the parking lot, and the guy who's driving me to the terminal asks which terminal I need to go to. And I was almost like, guy, I don't even know what airline I'm flying on. Like, I was so ridiculously, like, I didn't know what time our flight was. I didn't know where we were staying. Like, this is so out of character, and I'm surprised I didn't have, like, a panic attack meltdown right in the airport because I was just so out of control and not knowing what was going on.
And I had a folder, and it had reservations, it had confirmations, it had notes written on the inside, it had Charlotte and the dates on the little tab.
Oh my god.
Worlds are blowing up right now.
Yeah, total role reversal. So we've been laughing all day about, like, how ridiculous this is.
And then we were at the gate. We're at the gate, and they're starting to call, they're calling, group 1, group 2, and I was in 2, and I think you were
I was in 3. Yeah.
And, we're literally like, they're calling groups. Like, it's time to board the plane. And she goes, oh, I wanted to go buy earbuds. I'm going to be right back. I'm like, no, you can't do that. They're going to leave.
But what she didn't realize was I had spent the last 30 minutes, like timing out how long it was going to take me to walk back to the shop.
But you could have bought earbuds in that half hour.
I know, but I wasn't sure, and so, oh my gosh, it was so crazy, but I made it in plenty of time.
We both made the flight. It was fine, but she's like, yeah, peace, I'm going to go get some earbuds.
Yeah. Yeah, anyone who's known me for any length of time is like, she said what?
We're having good influences on each other.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Someday we might meet in the middle, maybe.
So we're going to talk a little bit, I guess, about maybe the process of podcasting first, I think. Are we?
Yeah, and just kind of like how all of this came to be.
Yeah, well, how did it come to be? What made you want to do a podcast?
So today, when we're recording, is November 3rd. November 3rd of last year, I didn't know what a podcast was, which is kind of crazy. So eventually somebody just explained that it's kind of like radio, just pre-recorded, and that made sense to me. So I kind of started investigating it, and I'd had in the back of my mind that I wanted to help people share their stories. And I wanted to give people a medium to share their story, because maybe they're not a writer, or maybe they're not expressing themselves or sharing their stories in any way. So at first I thought about making it like a video blog, but then that meant, like, how do you have any kind of quality control if people are recording their own videos?
Right.
And then I'd have to go through and edit it all. And, like, it just became, like, this huge time suck thing that was not going to be fun. And then I thought about having people write in their stories. But then again, I'm not wanting to just work with writers. So then that becomes me having to go through and edit and help people write.
Right.
So then it's a lot of time.
On that point, it's really interesting because I think you were kind of in a nebulous place when I responded to your thing about stories, and I wrote this story, I wrote the whole thing, and it was like one of the best pieces I'd ever written, and I emailed it. She's like, "That's great. When can you record a podcast?" What? You wait? What?
Right.
No.
Yeah, I was still trying to figure out what it was going to look like.
I'm not talking about it.
Yeah. And yeah, so I eventually realized that podcasting was going to be the right way, because it's really just having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And having a conversation with someone, I don't really have to go back and edit a ton of it or do much to it. So yeah, that's kind of how I landed.
So you're not really familiar with it. You're doing your research, and you did your first episode was just you talking. Mm-hmm. How, were you nervous? And we talked about this earlier, but how long did you hover over the upload button on your first episode?
Yeah. So when you talk with writers and you talk about hitting that publish or submit button on a piece, and we all hesitate. There's that oh, am I really willing to risk it? This is a scary moment. So there was definitely that with the podcast, especially because the moment that you hit publish, you have 6 weeks with iTunes, and they measure your metrics, and that's how they rank you, and those 6 weeks are, hugely important. Mm-hmm. So you have to be really careful when you publish your first episode, because the clock starts ticking.
Sure.
So I had everything ready. I was going to upload 5 episodes on the first day, and the night before, I just wanted to make sure everything was all set, and I accidentally hit publish. It was totally not intentional, and... so I was supposed to start on March 1st, and I started on February 28th.
You were 29th. Being right.
Yeah, right. It just kind of happened, but it took away a little bit of that, anxiety. Yeah, but there were other parts that made me really nervous.
Yeah.
One of the local news stations did a piece, so I had to go up to their studios and record, and that was really nerve-wracking. I found it really interesting that people made a point of saying, oh, you're so good at that, you're so natural, I wish I could do that. I'm like, oh, you didn't see me on the drive to the studio when I'm, almost hyperventilating, and, there is not enough Zoloft in the world to get me through this.
But you really, you were unbelievable. It was great to watch.
Thank you.
So, I guess one of the other questions I have about your podcast is that, you're getting people to tell incredibly personal stories.
Yeah.
Do you find that how hard is that to draw out of somebody?
Well, I think because people are submitting their own stories, mm-hmm. there are a few people that I've specifically asked to share a story. But because people are submitting, they're already kind of taking that risk that they want to share something. But then I really try really hard to make a point of, this is just a conversation. I'm recording it, but that's not the point. The mm-hmm. point is to have a conversation about your story. And people definitely seem to relax, and we just talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say for mine, I told an intensely personal story.
Yeah.
But it's funny, you've got that kind of separation between, it's like a Skype conversation with somebody I've never seen before.
Right. Yeah. Hi, nice to meet you. Tell me your deepest, darkest secrets.
Yeah.
Ready, go.
Yeah, exactly. But I think because you made it such a natural conversation, I had a hard time actually stopping telling my story.
Yeah.
And on that note, should we just go ahead and get started with your questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I need your...
Oh, yeah.
I need the questions.
That would be really helpful, right? There you go.
Okay. So, we start with, share a little bit about a difficult season you experienced.
Yeah, I think this whole year.
Yeah.
Can I say that? Yeah, it's been a different kind of year because Keith passed away. It'll be 2 years in January. And so I feel like this year...
And Keith is your husband.
Yeah. This year, we're finally, like, coming into ourselves, and life feels more normal, and, like, there's less survival mode happening. And so I've started dreaming more and, like, really thinking about what do I want my life to look like? Like, I know what it's not going to look like anymore, but what do I want it to look like now? And part of that is being more bold and sharing my story and helping other people share their stories and kind of looking for all the different opportunities to do that. I felt like when Keith died, there was this really strong sense of every time you have an opportunity to share your story, you have to say yes. Mm-hmm. Until there's, like, permission to start saying no. So as much as I have hated some of the times that I've said yes and I wanted to run and hide instead, it's been really hard to be so vulnerable in such public ways. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess people don't notice that all the time, but it's definitely been a real challenge.
Yeah. I guess the next question is, how are you reacting emotionally to all of it?
It's been up and down. There have been times when I felt really bold and courageous and brave and, like, felt like I'm on a mission and I have a purpose in sharing my story. Mm-hmm. And there are other times when I just want to keep my pajamas on all day long and, like, I don't know, just, like, hide from the world and pretend like I have nothing to share and there's nothing extraordinary about my life. And especially being such an introvert, mm-hmm. I'm really happy to sit behind my computer screen in my office and write because it's just me and my computer. But then now there's starting to be more dimensions of having to interact with people and trust people with my story. And that's been really scary.
So what do you do on those days when you feel like...
The scary days?
Yeah.
Sometimes I just hope it goes away. Maybe if I wait too long to respond to an email, they'll forget. No.
Right. But are you one of those, do one thing every day that scares you kind of people?
Sometimes. Mm-hmm. Other times I'm too tired. Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'm still enough in survival mode being a single parent of such young kids that...
And it's such a young age yourself, too.
Yeah. That I think when I start to get overwhelmed with, like, the work, the writing, and the podcasting and everything, I just kind of pull it way back and focus on, like, what can I control? Okay, I can clean the kitchen, or I can take the kids for a walk, or I can do all of those things, and those have zero emotional, like, consequences.
Sure.
Doing the dishes makes me kind of angry, but so I don't do that when I'm feeling upset. But, yeah, just kind of, like, pulling it back and giving myself perspective, and, like, that blog post can wait till tomorrow. Yeah. Like, if it scares me today, maybe it won't scare me tomorrow.
Right.
And I'm gonna do it, because I'm stubborn enough, and I said I would do it, but it doesn't have to happen right now.
Today.
Yeah.
Right. And, unlike this podcast episode where we had, 6 people waiting outside our hotel room door because we decided to get Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, I tried frozen lemonade for the first time. It's pretty good.
It's pretty amazing.
It's not, I'm a Del's girl. I grew up in New England. Del's is awesome, but I'm going to drink the whole thing. I think I'll...
When I'm not taking it out of your hand, it's kind of awesome. So, on a related note, like, what are you struggling with most during the season?
Yeah.
And how are you handling it?
I've definitely taken a lot more time off lately. Mm-hmm. I've been more gracious to myself when I'm feeling overwhelmed. And I think I struggle with, like, being an INFJ. I would like to know exactly what my life will look like in a year, and I would like to be able to plan for it and, like, make choices accordingly. And, you know, we were talking about,
that's a world I just don't understand.
We were talking about, like, making decisions about, like, finances earlier, and I was like, I can't buy this $8 shirt. I'd like to go on vacation when I'm 65. Like, there's almost too much forward thinking.
Right.
And I'm trying to learn how to just be a little bit more in the moment and relax a little bit, because I don't need to think anymore.
Yeah, and I'm trying to be a little less, let's do all the things. And that's how you end up with 3 teenagers, a new baby, a house that needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
Let's do this. It'll be so much fun. And then you have 9,000 things to do that are so much fun, and they're not fun.
And they're not fun at all.
None of it is fun.
Yeah, but I think I definitely struggle a lot with, like, why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. Why am I writing and podcasting? Like, is it because I want attention? No. Like, that's not why.
But I think that's something kind of all of us who write for the internet kind of struggle with. Like, are we doing this for us? Or are we doing this for an audience?
Right.
Why? I think,
and even, like, in other creative spheres, because I've done photography and I, you know, majored in dance and studied musical theater, and I feel like all of these creative spaces have this, like, who am I doing it for? Mm-hmm. And, like, yes, we're doing it for our audience, but if we're also not doing it for ourselves, then why are we doing it? Like, what's the point in spending our time on it? But I think I'm also struggling with, like, why am I sharing my story in these ways? Like, who is anyone benefiting? Mm-hmm. Or is it just me getting it off of my chest?
Right.
And kind of figuring out where on that spectrum I fall. Mm-hmm. And if I'm okay with where I fall. I get so excited to see people choosing to live bravely and authentically. Each week on Tuesdays and Fridays, I host a Facebook Live event to share more stories of people living bravely, and I want to hear your story too. Join us at facebook.com/Becky L. McCoy. I can only share so much with you here on the podcast, but you can read my story and learn more about living bravely and authentically at my blog, BeckyLMcCoy.com. Stop by and sign up to receive my monthly newsletter. It includes book recommendations and blog posts and podcast episodes you may have missed. Check the show notes for details.
In what ways is God making His grace apparent? Like, what good things are happening in the midst of all of this kind of struggle and tension?
Mm-hmm. I've definitely seen myself grow a lot. Mm-hmm. Not that I was ever really concerned about what other people think of me, but I'm definitely a lot less now.
Yeah.
I've seen it become very clear that in writing, in podcasting, and doing these different projects, my strengths are being used in ways that they've never been used before.
And are you kind of discovering more strengths?
And figuring out what I'm willing to let go of. And part of that is the widow journey, too. It's kind of a forced adolescence again. Like, mm-hmm. Who am I? Am I worth anything? What do I even like to do? Do I just like to do it because my friends like to do it? Mm-hmm. Like, you know, and like, oh, boys are gross, like, oh, all over again. And yeah. But those are also good things, mm-hmm. because I'm not part of a partnership anymore. And so I have to figure out who I am and what I'm good at and what I'm not good at and what I don't like, mm-hmm. and letting those things go. So that I can really excel at what I'm good at and what I like.
Let's talk about that a little bit. What have you discovered that you don't like, or maybe?
Well, I don't like doing the dishes. In case anyone hears that, like, if you want to come to my house and do my dishes, awesome.
Caleb, this means you.
Yeah, right. Grow up so you can do the dishes. Yeah, I don't love that. I don't love, like, the rote tasks. Like, I started paying someone to edit the podcast episodes because I felt like that just I wasn't loving it. And I felt like I could be using that time either with the kids or creating something or just doing something fun for myself. And I think that's a lot of it, is just figuring out, like, I never got around to making time to mow the lawn. Yeah. So I paid somebody to do that. Just things like that I wasn't excited to do. I wasn't making time to do either, but they needed to get done, and then figuring out who could do them for me.
Right. So you could do all these other cool things that you're working on right now.
Yeah.
Such as?
Or do nothing.
Nothing is good, too.
Right, it is. I'm learning. I'm trying. So I'm working on the Brave quiz will be ready soon, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And then along with that, there's a 5-day video guide to living more bravely, or I think it's called 5-day video guide to practicing courage, which I'm really excited about. I'm really pleased with how it's turning out. And then to follow up on that, there's going to be an ebook that's kind of the handbook to living through difficult seasons. And just some really practical advice that I've learned, but also from all the people that have been on the podcast this season. Just those very practical things, like how do you make it when life is really hard? Right. So I'm so excited to kind of unleash those. Also terrified, like a lot of procrastination happening because then I don't have to let the public know that those things exist. But I'm really excited about those.
Wow. How did you choose to live bravely and authentically as a result of this experience? But I think you're doing it. I mean, I think we're kind of talking about that right now.
And it helps when, like, people are excited about talking about living bravely. And that is really encouraging to me because, for me, it's something that not that it comes naturally, but it's like, it's a very clear choice to make for me. And I'm learning through feedback from people that it's not always a clear choice. And to be able to kind of hold hands with people and, like, link arms and help them choose to live bravely too has been really, really affirming that the time and the effort and the energy is really worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you were talking about being, at that, like, She Speaks. Or was it She Speaks?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, people are coming up to you with gifts and
you're
helping me.
That was weird.
Yeah.
Like, all these people that I didn't even know were like
people you've never even talk to, like
maybe like a passing encounter on Facebook or something,
right?
But they're like, "Oh, I brought this for you," and I didn't even know how to respond other than "thank you" because I didn't know who they were,
right? But that's why you're doing it, right? It's like to kind of just touch people,
right? Because I want to encourage people to live bravely, but where I live, I can only talk to so many people,
right?
And then you run out of people to talk to, or they get annoyed with you. And so, like, it's one of those, like, I hate social media, but I love social media because you get to connect with so many people that you wouldn't ever otherwise.
But then, like, I find it becomes almost like an obligation, right? Like,
yeah, which is why sometimes I disappear.
Yeah, yeah, I do the same thing.
I go quiet.
Yeah. So if I've gone quiet, if any of you guys have ever messaged me and I've gone, it's not personal.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely take breaks.
Yeah. So what would you say to encourage somebody in a similar situation? Like somebody who's kind of thinking about dipping their toe in the waters of podcasting and getting their message out there?
I think to anyone who has a message, if it's something that you are really passionate about and, like, you feel like you're going to explode if you don't do it, just do it. Like, don't worry about if it's perfect. Don't worry about if you have all the right equipment or the right education or the right whatever. Like, you'll figure it out. And it's just kind of more important to release that. Like, that's from the totally, like, creative side in me. That, like, it's like an energy you have to let out. Otherwise, like, you just won't be happy with yourself. And then I think, like, the more left-brain science-y part of me would also say just do it because you can clean it up later. But you have to, like, start somewhere. Like, give yourself a starting point. Or find somebody who can teach you. Because I'm totally a jump in and figure it out as you go person.
Yeah.
But other people like want a mentor, so find a mentor.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Did you want to do like 5 fun questions?
Yeah.
Or, well, where are they?
They're not there. Okay, so what am I loving right now? I'm loving being here. Mm-hmm. The last couple of weeks have been really hard with grief and things. I love my children, but they're little and they have a lot of energy. So being in a hotel room and not having to cook or clean or be responsible is really awesome. But also, with the workshop session tonight, it was focused on, what's your vision? What are you dreaming for?
Right.
And I've really needed to, be forced to let myself dream, because so much of life borders on survival that dreaming is just a luxury. Yeah. So that's been really awesome. I'm really excited for the next couple days.
I think a lot of us are just so in the weeds of our daily lives that to sit and talk about, well, who do I want to be in a few years? And
right.
What does my blog really look like? And who am I really trying to reach? They're not questions that we're going to really sit and ask ourselves. So to have that.
Right. Your kids aren't going to be like, Mommy, who would you like to emulate in 7 years?
Yeah. And by the way, I want milk.
Mine might, actually. My 4-year-old would ask a question like that. But yeah, totally. What food am I loving right now?
You're asking yourself your own questions. I
know. Whatever. It's fine. This is one of those different episodes. So I love the cherry oat bars at Starbucks. They're so good. And so I got one
Is
as
that
a
what
treat.
you tried to order for yourself
so
this
I
morning?
got one at Starbucks at the airport today, except when I sat down to eat it, it was like a cranberry bliss bar or whatever.
There was nothing blissful about that bar. Let's be honest.
No.
It was a bar of sadness.
And the cherry oat bar is just so good. It was sad. I was so disappointed. But the cherry oat bar is really good. And, there's this place in town where I live called East Coast Taco, and it's like Tex-Mex, and it's just...
Tacos.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, which question would you like to ask yourself next?
Next I would like to ask myself... 3 is, what am I doing to take care of myself? I'm trying to read more often. I'm a better human when I read.
Do you find that you have zero time for reading? Because I can't. I just have no time to read. And then by the time I finally get a chance to read, I think I get 3 paragraphs in and then I'm sound asleep.
Yeah, I could make more time. Hulu and I could maybe spend a little less time together. But, yeah, there's also that, balance between I have zero brain power to, figure out what these words are trying to tell me.
Yeah.
But, waking up early, I definitely have to wake up way earlier than the kids so that I'm thinking clearly by the time Caleb comes rushing in the room.
Like when you sent me a Facebook text at, 4:45.
Yeah.
You were really awake at 4:45? Awake and functioning at 4:45?
No, I was just in bed trying to go back to sleep for an hour. Also, I think coming to weekends like this, it's really hard as a single parent. It's not hard to, take time away from my children because that's how I, recharge. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to ask people to take care of my children for several days. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really thankful for the people who are willing to do that for me because it's such a gift. Mm-hmm. And then the last question is, how am I living bravely? What am I doing to be brave? I'm going to take time off. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You mean off from
the podcast and blogging and finish up this episode and get the quiz and the video guide and all that launched, and then just take a couple months to give myself space. Mm-hmm. My brain won't be able to slow down because that's never happened. But then maybe I'll, actually read more and actually do things that I find a lot of joy from. I love doing this stuff. Yeah. But my brain needs a break. It needs something different. And I think my kids need to see me a little more away from my computer.
Right.
Yeah. really hope you were encouraged by this episode to do things even if they make you nervous or you're afraid. Yeah, I'm just so grateful that you've been on this journey with me to listen to other people's stories, and it's been a real honor, and I'm really excited for next season. I already have a bunch of guests lined up, and their stories are equally as incredible as all of the stories from this season. If you are excited to join me next season, at some point in late winter 2017, make sure that you subscribe. You can subscribe in iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, and it would be really helpful if you could rate and review them, because then when we start the second season, other people will be able to find the podcast as well. That would be really helpful. If you want to keep in touch, make sure you sign up for my email list, beckylmccoy.com/email. I'm really looking forward to seeing you next season.